When you think of the great American dynasties, what names come to mind? The Kennedys with their tragic glamour? The Bushes, or perhaps the Roosevelts? But what if I told you that another family, one you've likely never heard of, has put more presidents in its bloodline than any of them? They are the Delanos. My name is Beatrice, and like you, I'm drawn to the quiet stories that secretly shape our world. This is the story of how one family, born from the Mayflower era, built the America we know today, from the shadows. But this story isn't just about politics. It's a story of impossible contradictions. A family that would help guide America through its greatest wars, while quietly building a fortune from the shadows of the Chinese opium trade. Their influence would shape the very foundations of our economy, playing a key role in the creation of the Federal Reserve. And yet, their legacy includes achievements not even limited to the confines of Earth. So, how did a single bloodline manage to place itself at the center of America's greatest triumphs and some of its darkest secrets? The answer begins not with a bang, but with a whisper, 4 centuries ago, on the rocky shores of a new world. Our story starts in 1621. A year after the Mayflower made its famous landing, a ship called the Fortune arrived in Plymouth. On board was a young man of Dutch-French ancestry named Philippe Delanois. He was drawn to America by the letters from his cousin who had sailed on the Mayflower, tales of a land where a man could build a world from scratch. It was here that he shed his old identity, anglicizing his name into something that sounded more at home in this rugged landscape, Delano. But ambition needs more than a new name. It needs lineage, and the first truly strategic move of the Delano dynasty was a marriage. Philip's son, Jonathan, married a woman named Mercy Warren. This wasn't just a union of 2 people, it was a master stroke. Mercy was the granddaughter of Richard Warren, a passenger on the Mayflower and a signer of its legendary compact. In a single generation, the Delanos had grafted their new, ambitious branch onto the most sacred root of American legitimacy. From that point on, their ascent was quiet, deliberate, and unstoppable. They began weaving themselves into the very fabric of New England power, becoming pillars of the community known as the Boston Brahmins. This was the exclusive cultural and financial elite of the Northeast, the original American old money. They weren't just living in the New World, they were methodically building its corridors of power, brick by brick, marriage by marriage. Long before they produced presidents or funded industries, the Delanos were mastering the art of the long game, laying a foundation of influence so deep and so solid that it would shape the course of a nation for centuries to come. But the gilded foundations of this family were cemented with something far darker and far more profitable than Boston money. It was time for the Delanos to build an empire, and empires require fortunes. Meet Warren Delano Jr., a name you should remember, as he was the grandfather of a future president. In the mid-19th century, he sailed to China and became a senior partner in one of America's largest trading firms there. Their most lucrative product? Opium, grown in India, sold in China, fueling a trade that devastated millions of lives. This vast, controversial wealth flowed back to America, where it was cleansed and given a respectable face. It helped found esteemed institutions like Lehigh University. Think about that for a moment. A legacy of enlightenment built on a foundation of ruin. How does a family wash a fortune that's stained? You merge it with one that's spotless. The next generation made perhaps the family's most brilliant move. Franklin Hughes Delano married Lara Astor. This wasn't just a society wedding. It was a masterful act of reputation laundering. They fused the Delano's controversial liquid cash with the unassailable old-world legitimacy of the Astor real estate dynasty. The secret was now buried deep beneath layers of New York brownstone and social prestige. With their names sanitized and their fortunes secured, there was only one move left on the chessboard. It wasn't about making more money. It was about controlling the system itself. And that brings us to Frederick Adrian Delano, appointed by a president to the very first Federal Reserve Board. He helped design the architecture of America's modern financial system. The family was no longer just a player in the game. They were now writing the rules. But what is the ultimate rulebook? It's not a financial ledger. It's the Constitution itself. And to truly shape a nation, you don't just write the rules of its economy. You become the ruler. From the very beginning, I promised you a secret dynasty with a presidential legacy greater than the Adams, the Roosevelts, or the Bushes. It's time to deliver on that promise. Let's unravel the bloodline. The first thread leads us to a man who saved the Union itself, Ulysses S. Grant. The stoic general, the reluctant president. His connection is subtle, almost hidden, just as the Delanos would prefer. It runs through his mother, Hannah Simpson, whose own lineage traces directly back to the 17th century Delanos through a woman named Susanna Delano. It's the first piece of evidence, a Civil War hero and a president of the United States, a Delano descendant, quietly sitting in the White House. One could be a coincidence, but the pattern deepens. The next thread takes us to the 1920s, to a man who embodied the polar opposite of the Gilded Age excess his Delano cousins enjoyed. President Calvin Coolidge, Silent Cal, the man of quiet integrity who ascended to the presidency after the death of Warren G. Harding. His link is just as real, traced back through his own family tree to a woman named Elizabeth Delano. Two presidents. Two men who shaped America in their own distinct eras, both carrying the same secret ancestral spark. A family that could produce both opium traders and presidents known for their unimpeachable honesty. But these two presidencies, as significant as they were merely the prelude. They were the quiet assertion of a power that had been cultivated for 300 years. The final act, the grand masterpiece of the Delano legacy, was yet to come, because the third president didn't just carry their blood, he carried their name. Think about it. A mother, a key figure in New York's high society, whose maiden name was a symbol of both old-world prestige and new-world controversial wealth, a woman named Sarah Delano. Her son was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This wasn't a distant cousin. This was a direct inheritance. The name, the blood, the ambition, all culminating in one man who would not just lead America, but redefine it. Through the Great Depression and the Second World War, FDR held the nation's fate in his hands. The New Deal, the social safety net, the defeat of fascism. This wasn't just the work of one president. It was the absolute pinnacle of the Delano family's centuries-long journey. From a refugee on a boat in 1621 to a man commanding the free world, all under the name Delano. But what if I told you their most astonishing legacies weren't forged in the White House, but on the vast American prairie and in the infinite silence of space? Think of the book Little House on the Prairie. We picture log cabins, sun-drenched fields, and the simple, rugged virtues of American individualism. The story was crafted by Laura Ingalls Wilder, an author who has defined wholesome pioneer values for generations of children. She was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's fifth cousin, but this was no happy family connection. As FDR was building his New Deal, a vision of collective security, his cousin Laura was quietly forging a literary rebellion. Her books were a passionate defense of the self-reliant individual against any form of government overreach. Her private diaries and letters were even more blunt. She despised her powerful cousin, saw his policies as a betrayal of the American spirit, and once chillingly wrote that the only solution might be a good, swift bullet. Think about that. America's wholesome storyteller, the icon of frontier life, privately wishing for the assassination of her own family member in the Oval Office. The Delano legacy wasn't just a dynasty, it was a civil war of ideas within its own blood. And if one branch of the family was chronicling America's story on its dusty plains, another was aiming far, far higher. Another descendant, a man named Shepard, looked not to the past, but to the cosmos. As one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, he was a new kind of pioneer. On May 5, 1961, strapped into a tiny capsule atop a pillar of fire, he pierced the heavens, becoming the first American to touch the void. 10 years later, as commander of Apollo 14, he would leave his footprints on the lunar surface. The Delano legacy, born from a refugee on a ship, had been cemented not just in the bedrock of a nation, but in the stardust of the moon. Their story wasn't just written in Washington, D.C., it was now, quite literally, written in the stars. So, this is the Delano legacy in all its staggering complexity. A journey that began with a single French-Flemish refugee landing at Plymouth in the 17th century, and quietly spiraled out to become an invisible empire shaping a continent. It's a story of profound, almost dizzying contrasts, isn't it? A family tapestry woven with threads of the brightest light and the darkest shadow. There's the immense political power, producing more presidents than any other dynasty. There's the immense wealth, some of it built on the brutal opium trade. And then there's the cultural reach, touching everything from the books we read our children to the very stars in the sky. For centuries, while the headlines were filled with the dramatic sagas of the Kennedys, the Bushes, or the Addams family, the Delanos often remained just out of sight, less a spectacle and more the deep, quiet foundation upon which so much was built. It leaves you with the quiet realization that they were perhaps the more foundational, more pervasive current in the American story all along. From presidents and opium traders to beloved authors and astronauts, which piece of this hidden legacy surprised you the most? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. And if you, like me, are fascinated by these hidden stories that shape our world, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. You won't want to miss what we uncover together next.